Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is Apple earnings, and as of this recording, which is just after the company ended their call, stock is down about 2%, a little more than 2%, which is more or less kind of at the lows of the session. The pressure point, I'll jump right into it, was related to this kind of two sides to how the iPhone is doing relative to Apple Intelligence. And the first side is how it did in September, and the second side is what are the expectations going forward. And in terms of the September quarter, the iPhone actually did really well. It was up 5.5%. The street was looking for 3% growth. The street numbers had been coming down over the past few weeks because of some reports from Verizon and AT&T, and separately from some of their component suppliers, suggesting that the first few weeks of iPhone 16 was relatively muted. But it ended up being better than expected. And so put that in the category as a directional positive because, of course, those were people buying in anticipation of these Apple Intelligence features, which only came out a few days ago. The second piece to it is related to guidance. And the revenue guidance for the December quarter basically implies that the street's December iPhone number of 4% is more or less correct. So specifically, they guided the revenue to be up low to mid single digits in the quarter, and the street was at 6.8%. I put low to mid single digits at a 4 to 6%. I would consider that. So you could view this as a fractional guide down. You could view this as in the margin of error. I think that the bigger picture, I view this as this is still a waiting game when it comes to the benefits of Apple Intelligence on iPhone growth. And from my perspective, I'm a believer that these features will resonate with people. And I also think that my experience with them over the past week, and I think what they outlined we're going to see for the rest of the year, which I'll get into in a minute, isn't going to justify some sort of big acceleration for sure in the next 3 months, maybe not in the next 6 months. And I think that there's a piece where on the side, a 20% belief that maybe they would have surprised, kind of seen better traction with some of these features in the December guidance. We did not see that. And so things are on track relative to the street's expectations in terms of those who believe in a super cycle, present company included. I would say that this was a little bit of a disappointment. I'd been thinking that the really the most potent piece of this acceleration is going to come in the June quarter of next year. I still believe that, but December, it's not going to play out. Another piece on margins, or on the guidance, I just want to quickly mention is they did guide margins higher than where the street was at. For December, they gave a 46 to 47% range. The street was at 46.1. So they continue to move those margins higher. That's the pressure point. Now I'm going to shift to some other topics, just more broadly about Apple Intelligence and how it's going. And Cook was clear to say it's been out 3 days. The only metric he gave was that the number of updates to 18.1 is running twice as fast, twice as many people as was in 17.1. And he said that that's an indication that people are aware of what's going on and that there's interest in all this, which is true. He also outlined that in the December quarter, there's going to be better writing tools, a little bit of Chat GPT integration, and localized versions of English going to UK, Canada, and Australia. And when you kind of put that together, I think it just reiterates that this is a really slow rollout. And you think about the English-speaking countries are probably just under half of Apple's total revenue. And so they're still working through some things in Europe. I don't know what's going on there to try to get some of these features turned on. Optimistic that we'll get there, but I think that this is something that is going to test some patience over the months ahead. But that's kind of what we're looking like the product's going to be, is more or less what it looks like now, but in a few more English-speaking countries by the end of the year, which really shifts the focus of when this gets more exciting back again to that June of 25 quarter. If, in fact, most of these features get put in place at the end of March, it's going to be some time. If you've been following closely along, have lowered my expectations for fiscal 25 iPhone growth. I was at 15%. I moved that down to 10. The street's at 5, so I'm still more optimistic, and that growth comes kind of in the back half of the fiscal year. One of the reasons I'm more optimistic, of course, is Apple Intelligence. Another, it's a big pool of upgrades coming, and it doesn't take much to bring those numbers up. Effectively, if you get 8% of the cohort that's supposed to upgrade in fiscal 26 to move to 25, 8% of just that group, not of the overall iPhone base, but just the group that would normally upgrade in fiscal 26, that gets you to that 15% growth number. Now, I don't think we're going to get that 8%, but I just want to give some context and some sensitivity to how the numbers work. Next topic is related to services. Came in at 12%. The street was at 13%. That's a miss by the definition of a miss or a make. And I think it's still kind of more or less representative of a good business. And the part of the reason why is their install base continues to grow as it should, and that helps the services piece. That positive glow around services more broadly, I think still has this unknown about what's going to happen with the relationship with Google and the placement within Safari. That is basically $15 billion a year. It accounts for 10 to 15% of their operating income. It came up on the Google call last night. What if that goes away? Google said they would fight it. They want to maintain it. It came up on the Apple call tonight. Tim Cook said don't want to comment about it. But it's one of those things where it's a small percentage chance that anything negative would happen there. But it kind of, I think, is in the back of some minds as the Department of Justice gets more vocal. That to me seems like the most logical point where you could see some sort of pressure on Apple about all these different kind of the Justice Department cases. So that's services. Last piece I want to touch on is China. Of course, it's been a drag. I was hoping it to turn more positive, more like 5% growth in the quarter. It was up 0.5%. So good news is it did turn positive. The bad news is that China still has not kind of hit back to stride, despite the fact that Cook highlighted that the iPhone is the best-selling phone in China. So I think that when you put this together, the comps still get easy for China, which still bode for what I think should be some accelerating overall top-line revenue growth. So when we put all this together, my takeaway is that this excitement and the potential around Apple Intelligence, unfortunately, is going to take longer than what I had expected, and I still believe that eventually we will hit that inflection point. So on behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.